designed to be different, to be able to help people to reach their potential, but also help them with their health issues, trauma issues. Trauma and complex trauma is very involved and can come from many, many different areas of experiences, events, scenarios that we have lived. Because we are all unique, that trauma is unique for you too. So, my chosen training back in the 1990s gave me a toolbox of skills, and my quest gave me more understanding of people's unique needs. I developed unique person centered methods for faster recovery, and because I did that, I offered a clinical combination approach and incorporated this thinking into D.A.R.E therapy. And people would come from me from all over, from Europe and the UK, because I could offer them a one-stop shop. And I launched D.A.R.E therapy because people were asking me, where can I get this? My sister could do with this, and my cousin, and so on and so forth. And I launched the training and the therapy in 2010. It still is revolutionary in the approach for a whole body faster recovery, because quite frankly, if we are ill, that part of us is not isolated. It affects all of us, and it affects our systems, our senses, our emotions, etc. And logically, to me, it makes sense to treat the person instead of the outcome. There is no black and white. Everything is unique to each individual or client. And there is a lot of information the body can provide, highlighting undermining cause and effect of health disorders, dysfunctional systems. Intuitive and psychic elements are taught on how to investigate and find the unique cause for the individual, because it is very unique to you. Even in the same family, it's different. You can have both, you can have the same parents, grandparents, but the individual, the siblings, will each function, their systems and so on, differently, because we are formed differently in the womb. So D.A.R.E was born through a quest to find answers to people's health distress and mental issues. And this little boy here, he was from Sweden, and I knew his mother, and she had a traumatic birth. And she asked me to go and treat her and him. And as I was in the Netherlands, I arranged to go over and see her and stayed with them for a few days and treated them both. They were very, very traumatized, and dealing with a traumatized baby from birth trauma is very, very scary for parents and people around, because you think you've done something wrong. You haven't. It's just the system and how we are not prepared for different aspects of birth, which is one of the things I want to help professionals with, etc., with the bigger picture of understanding. So the mental and emotional side was missed out of the program as far as I'm concerned in my training. It was talked about, but essentially big holes in understanding and training on both fronts. And I became a specialist in trauma, complex trauma, mental health, and so on. And I went on to find many missing jigsaw parts. I developed methods to help babies and families. And 2 decades later, I continue to teach about my finds. So D.A.R.E, dissolve and resolve emotions, are effective with any body, mind, emotional disorder. The psychosomatic effects, that's where psychologically and physically these impacts are felt on both sides of the coin. We are one unit, and one part offline will affect every other part, and systems and functions decline, causing long-term issues. It works with chronic fatigue, exhaustion, and I've had great success treating people with COVID, because COVID is a whole body issue, and certainly the underlying issues of functions and systems being under par has really come to the fore with COVID. This is something I've been talking about for a very long time. So where does anxiety and depression come from? Why are some more prone to mental health issues while others' coping strategies reduces those outcomes? certainly psychological issues are at an all-time high, including children from school, the pandemic, and the pressures and traumas from school and education can be very, very pressured in these days. We burn out, and that's what a lot of the underlying symptoms are. PTSD, post-traumatic stress from trauma, etc., that we've had. We can also have underlying depression that may have been hidden from view, but as we become more pressured, it tips the balance. And that's what happened, certainly from my point of view, in the pandemic. People were very traumatized because they couldn't go out and so on. People rely on going out because that gives them the space and feeling of not being hemmed in at home and so on and so forth. And of course, we have the thinking that you go out into nature, everything disappears. Well, you go out into nature and you don't have the negativities around you or the pressures around you. But when you come home, you walk back into that again. For me, very much, it's core something that's going on that's causing these flatlining, living on the edge, anxiety, etc. And it doesn't take much to tip the balance. Some of my finds and hidden finds were around birth, formation, utero, and the other side of the coin was from intergenerational historical events that are very much passed down through DNA and dominance within our families and lineages. So essentially, intergenerational influences are very, very new thinking. I found this when I was working with the babies back in early 2000, that these babies had actually taken on a lot of emotions from the mother, how the mother was feeling. And of course, biologically, biochemically, we are bombarded and formed from different types of hormones. And depending upon how the mother is, as to what our baselines will be. And that's why it makes it so different, even in the same family. We will have different coping strategies. So every health disorder includes trauma of some kind, emotions, and people are not separated into parts yet today. The overall view is to treat the symptoms or the part hurting, treating the symptoms or the outcome instead of the cause. We medically firefight health disorders from a D.A.R.E point of view, and there is no prevention or education to avoid health outcomes. We end up managing a disorder is the preference rather than curing, and medication to suppress. We talk about pain and mental health issues and how to manage that. And from my point of view, that's madness. We're not curing anything. And logically, biochemically, and from clients' feedback, it does little for removing or diluting trauma, PTSD, PND, etc. I found we needed to have a direct approach with a whole body clinical methods to achieve lasting recovery. So dissolve and resolve emotions is an exciting new whole body approach with health disorders with solutions for wellness. It's bringing a new era of approaches to all sorts of health issues. It also works because of my interactions with the babies. I had to find something to help them. And this also helps with emotion and genetic code intergenerational issues. So from the time I launched this therapy program, I already had all of these things integrated into the training, into the foundation training, that we could help people with more than the physical. The physical is bombarded with chemicals, peptides, and hormones because of emotions. Emotions cause anxiety. It creates the overwhelming feeling. It will also affect the mind and how the mind works. And the mind is a storage area, but it does store and remembers all that happens to us. It's logged within the subconscious. And the subconscious will keep throwing these things out about trauma because it doesn't know what to do with it. It is too big for the mind to deal with it. And this is why we have PTSD. From my point of view, you deal with the emotions, you reduce the emotions, you then have a slowing down of the knock-on effects with behavior and mental health issues that can then help people to recover. The body will work with you when you get rid of the cause. So 1 in 4 suffer from mental health issues. Children's depression, ADHD is off the scale within society with no solutions for prevention. And trillions are suffering mental health issues in the workplace and the home. D.A.R.E has new solutions with faster recovery success, education, prevention, and avoidance. Because from my perspective, if we don't understand what's going on and don't understand what we can do to make those changes, then it's going to happen again. So by giving the education as well as helping with the therapy, we can then help the individual to be in a very, very different place and able to recover faster and avoiding in the future. Historical intergenerational outcomes are lived from lineage and past life events, leaving dormant influences within us. It creates a formation, it's from formation and DNA core drives inherited to live the same way. We become locked in to those ancient beliefs, those traumas, and intergenerational trauma is not the only influence we live from our ancestors. If there was a great trauma from World War II, that could be passed down through the generations of the fear, the terror, the horrendous experiences that those people lived. And certainly with Holocaust survivors, they have had a look at their backgrounds and how their children and grandchildren have developed. And they found that the grandchildren have actually taken on a lot of the trauma, depression, and anxiety from their grandparents. It seemed to reduce in their own children, but came out quite strongly in the grandparents. And of course, they are innocents. They haven't lived those events, but they live from the biochemical and the psychological influences that have been so great for their grandparents or great grandparents. And sometimes it can jump 2 or 3 generations, but it will come out again, which means that the grandchildren have their children, and a couple of generations on, they may be living it again, which is why we've got to deal with it, why we need to remove these impacts so that it isn't passed on. And of course, because we've not understood it, nothing's been put in place to help. Unfortunately, there isn't a pill that will do this. It has to be direct because it is unique to the individual. And of course, mental health is huge. As I said, 1 in 4, 91.9 billion was lost in the economy in 2019 as a result of ill health related absences in the workplace, and more than 69% of employees suffer with sleep deprivation. That is one of the highlighted symptoms from depression, is lack of sleep. And of course, we can have things like this, eczema. This is a very young newborn, and I treated this little boy when he was about 4, but he was born with eczema. And as you can see, it's all around his eyes, etc. Not a very pleasant way to come into the world and to be living this as a newborn. He was affected in this way from the mother's trauma, and I found many cases of mothers' anxiety or trauma, also gut issues that have caused eczema in their children and coming out very, very early on. And I've helped a lot of children in this way, because the creams and so on and so forth will not work. And so we need something direct. We need then to be able to help the individual to strengthen that skin, to be able to get their digestive system back to where it should be, and removing that trauma that they have taken on board. So, bigger picture to everything from a D.A.R.E perspective. I advocate it's a result of, not necessarily the cause. And even though people are given a diagnosis, does not mean to say that that is the problem. That is the result of, and why we need a person-centered approach to look at the biological, emotional, and energetics, because they are all mechanisms that need investigating. And people may look all right. They will appear fit from the outside. However, when I get them lying down, I can see, well, actually, there is an awful lot that isn't adding up here. And internal system investigation proves otherwise. So just because we look okay doesn't mean to say that we are. And we can have many cocktails of issues, and health decline can be involved with several factors driving decline. And again, going back to COVID, I've treated many people who were seen to be very fit. They did the running, they did the sport, they did all of that, but they fell very heavily with COVID. And that proved because their immune and their internal systems were not in tip-top condition as they appeared to be from their running, etc. We have to look what's going on inside and the facts, because if there is decline internally, it will show through in one way or another. So we understand about fetal alcohol syndrome and the effects from drugs, yet very little about trauma and birth. And as I said, I've been working with that for over 20 years. Again, we can feel bruised from birth, and it's a new concept, misunderstood by professionals and society, long-term health impacts received from utero, and the type of birth. It happens daily without questioning, and little is understood of the cause and effect of mental health outcomes in children's and adults' lives from traumatic births. We are all born. So therefore, we can be still living from underlying trauma. And certainly it does come out when parents, new parents, have a baby, and even in pregnancy, this can come out for the father as well as the mother. And the trauma that they had in the birth process can also affect their post-birth experience, and certainly with anxiety and depression, PND, etc., that, or PPD as it's called now, postpartum depression, and certainly that can all affect the the next generation as well as the parents when they've had this wonderful experience of pregnancy. Birth doesn't quite go the way it should, and then there can be a knock-on effect. So birth trauma causes extraordinary impacts upon the body and the mind. Utero malfunctions, absorption of mother's emotion, anxiety, and it forms, when we're in utero, we are formed with coping strategies. Again, hormonal, biochemical elements will be there, and it will give us our baselines for stress, coping with life, etc., or not. And of course, you then have the added experience of intergenerational impacts, and genetic influences are all felt in the body and mind, and reliving emotional impacts from long ago. They may not be yours, but you can still live them because of the hormonal and intergenerational dominance within the DNA, within the nervous system, and affecting the organs, etc., and how the brain and the pathways of the brain are formed. The underlying hidden cause and effect become the norm. We accept the levels of depression and anxiety because we have nothing else to compare it with. And it will affect from many, many different areas that will set our baselines, even our nervous system baseline. And as you know from other people around you, some people have better pain thresholds than others. It's the same with the nervous system. In your coping, your ideas, your confidence, your self-esteem, everything is involved in intergenerational traumas. It can affect survival behavior. We don't fit into the world, we feel alone, etc. ADHD, allergies, and the cognitive depletion from shock and trauma. We have this freeze of the mind that cannot get out of the shock that has happened. We then have limited thinking and choices. We can't see a bigger world for us. Our world shrinks around us. And certainly we can have more of that with our culture and lineage conditioning, depending on where you're born, what culture, etc. you live in, as to the freedom and the freedom of choice that you will have as a female or a male, etc. So many different expectations from family and cultures and where we live in the world. Some are more restricted than others, depending upon where you live. We also have chronic pain, and chronic pain is an emotional condition as well as a physical sensation. It is a complex experience that affects through mood and behavior, and it can lead to isolation, mobility, and drug dependence, says Harvard University. Now, very much I came across emotional pain 20 years ago, and it is the chicken and the egg situation, Groundhog Day living. And I think we've wised up over the last decade around taking painkillers, etc. And in some cases, it just doesn't work. And this is why, because it's emotional pain rather than a skeletal pain. Things do go wrong with the skeletal, and we can have wear and tear. But with emotional pain, it moves around the body, and very much it can be involved in our depression, anxiety again, and it can cause that weariness. Pain is very wearing. We can feel the pain dissipating when we are treating people, especially with emotional pain. We can work with skeletal pain too. So from a D.A.R.E point of view, it's madness to allow mental health and individual suffering to continue when we can do something that will reduce it, and especially for our newborns and young children. Mental health has a stigma attached to it. After all, we shot those who suffered trauma and PTSD in World War One. Thank goodness we've moved on from that, but we still haven't moved on enough from a D.A.R.E point of view. And we must improve our understanding approaches to help providers, health providers, and individuals, parents, etc., to understand that there are solutions and there is education and knowledge to help us to avoid this. Historical and past life influences are carried and actioned more than we realized, and in D.A.R.E practitioners training we explore individual limitations to enhance professional and personal lives. It opens doors to a whole new world of factors involved in body-mind decline, and it answers why we live with different health issues and well-being limitations and barriers to life. And certainly we can have a combination of limiting barriers unique to each of us. So very much the combination approach is clinical, it's holistic. We work with energy. We also work with the quantum field. The quantum field is a very new science, but again, the quantum field was introduced for when we launched, when I launched D.A.R.E. So I had already come across this, how it was affecting, and how it keeps us on that Groundhog Day. So there is working with hormonal issues, birth trauma, utero malfunctions, and of course the intergenerational impacts. It covers everything because we live everything, and we can live a little bit of this and more of that. So there are many pieces of the jigsaw to correct in anybody's issues, because we don't realize how much we carry from our ancients. We could have taken our mother's anxiety or depression. Maybe she suffered with PND or baby blues, and we can take that on board, and we do. And it is now recognized that children's cognitive development is affected by PND when the mother has postnatal depression, and those first few years of development and the brain pathways that are developing is critical within the first 3 years. So the more we help women, the more we're going to help our children. So it's a therapy that finds what is limiting life, relationships, health, mindsets, and behavior, and what intergenerational influences we are driven by. Living our life, our own life, or are we living a combination of historical baselines and events that happened a long time ago, but we're still living the trauma from it? Generations determine our character, behavior, mindsets, and health outcomes, a baseline of defaults, continuing restrictions, dysfunctions, and mind, body, emotion, action replay. We are unaware how prevalent they are in our lives and our health issues. And people are quite shocked, in fact, to find out how much. So we help to rebalance these body systems, energy medicine, but we also heal the trauma, heal the emotional pain. And why this works so well, because we are looking at everything and treating everything. It's a high energy healing methods to heal the whole person. It also helps to remove the etheric chains to past life influences, the historical influences of the ancients, and karma. And I'm doing a separate webinar tomorrow on karma, because again, that's a big part of our health issues, and ancients leaving us a huge area for us to continue to mop up from them. So what disorders does D.A.R.E help with? Well, every type of psychological or emotional issue, maternal stress, behavior, ADHD, allergies and eczema, because trauma is underlying all of that. The pain, skeletal disorders and emotional pain, menstrual issues, menopause, women's health, gynecological conditions, hormonal imbalances, plus so much more. And I also run webinars on menopause. One-to-one therapy is available, and a big part of becoming adult is unlearning the false concepts taught from people who were institutionalized in ancient dogma and intergenerational defaults, who didn't know what they were talking about either. So obviously you can have a one-to-one appointment or a group of treatments of D.A.R.E therapy, or you can just come along and have a free consultation. D.A.R.E Foundation training includes 2-day induction, which is open to anybody, but it's also the start of D.A.R.E training to ensure we are all on the same page with abilities and connections. It's a personal recalibration. It enhances senses, intuition, sixth sense, the psychic abilities, because we use psychic abilities in with D.A.R.E. We have those abilities so we can see what's going on. It's a bit like an x-ray. And energy medicine and system education. And here in 2008 is a little quote of when I was doing my quest, is what we do today has an impact on our future lives, as our past lives have an impact upon our present life. And we are the creation of our past, present, and future. But of course, you have intergenerational stuff coming in here, and what they did way back when is affecting us today. So induction is there to find the road to happiness and abundance, and it changes people's lives. This 2-day or 4-day course is a 2-day, and then there's another 2 days on mind and emotions. That is very, very much helping us to understand the bigger picture of what's happening and how we can have skills and methods that you can have yourself every day, that can help you with your mental health as well as your well-being. And understanding how we tick makes a big difference. So we start off with our first foundation training on the physicality and what is out of kilter, what has happened from births, falls, injuries, car crashes, shock and trauma, the disconnections, the anatomy and physiology is taught, and the intergenerational methods to help literally put people back together again. And there is one-to-one method exchange, understanding. There are videos and webinars, etc. So we look at it from every direction, and there are case studies involved. Large manuals, there's a book, there's a 4-hour DVD. There are different areas of education about how to work with people, take a consultation, etc., etc. So it gives you everything you could think of. It's very, very comprehensive. And the second half of the foundation training is another 6 days. So you have 2-3 days, then you do your case studies, you then come back the second half, which is where we look at all the emotional stuff, quantum field impacts, and the restoring justice, so that people can move on from their traumas, from the injustice that they've had in their lives. And it's also about blending the methods that you learnt in Foundation 1. You end up by having 39 new methods for you to take on board. It's a big toolbox. You can use these methods for yourself, for your family and your friends, as well as having it as an extra spoke to your wheel as a practitioner or a professional. You don't need to have any previous experience. You can book a call to discuss and have a consultation, or you could have a call from this webinar to find out about the extra benefits if you want to book. And quite frankly, we only know what we know until we know differently. And certainly the training here is exceptional. And as I said, it is comprehensive. D.A.R.E Foundation training with induction starts on the 13th of October. 13th to the 15th are 3 days, and then the second half is the 20th to the 22nd of October, and then we come back in January to do F2. So contact if you would like to consider some of that, or you would like one-to-one, or even attending the induction training. That will help you. We're on all the media outlets. There are plenty of YouTube videos, etc., that you can find, and on the website. This is our sister company that I set up a couple of years ago, Joy Wisdom Trust. It is a platform for women and children's health and around conception and professional education that is bringing a bigger platform with a bigger picture and a bigger voice for women's health requirements, because we haven't got the support. Our health is not recognised, and it has been the case since I wrote my first book in 2010, and certainly not a lot has changed. We talk about it, but we're rubbish. And so from my point of view, and we're also looking at mental health and women's health and menopause, abuse, domestic violence, etc. So it's a big platform, and there are experienced practitioners that can work with you, but also education. And if you're interested in that, you can find us on the website. And certainly my goal is to ensure that we reduce suffering and pain and start to learn new ways to help ourselves and each other.